All right, it's great to see everybody again today. Again, this is our third session of a four-session program on missions. The first session we covered was about your personal salvation and your personal testimony, making that. And then the second session that we covered was about presenting the gospel message. And today we're going to talk about missional organizations. Before we do that, we're going to have a little devotion, and Charlotte is going to come up and read Matthew chapter 10, verse 7 through 16, and Matthew 28.
Matthew 10, 7. As we go preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. Provide neither gold nor silver nor copper in your money belts, nor bag for your journey, nor 2 tunics, nor sandals, nor staffs, for a worker is worthy of his food. Now whatever city or town you enter, inquire who is in it is worthy, and stay till you go out. And when you go into a household, greet it. If the household is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to it. And whoever will not receive you or hear your words when you depart from that house or city, shake off the dust from your feet. Assuredly I say to you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. Behold, I send you out as sheep into the midst of wolves. Therefore be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Now I'm going to read Matthew 28. 18. And Jesus came and spoke to them, saying, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
The devotion that I wanted to share with you today was there, and I wanted to go to our memory verse for the week, and it comes from Luke chapter 14, verse 27 and 28. And whoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you intending to build a tower does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it? I picked that memory verse mainly for the second piece of it, and that is that when I chose to start going on mission trips, I had to really make a decision about bearing my cross, number one, but counting the cost from the standpoint of the time involved in the trips that I was taking and the financial aspects of it, and what the consequences may be in regards to my career and my personal life. All of that has been affected the last 4 years with my involvement in missions. And I wanted Brother James to come up and comment on really the first part of that about bearing your cross, because the things I've heard recently in the last couple of weeks talk about we are to suffer along with Jesus Christ, and maybe I happen to hear that in somebody's class.
Thank you, Steve. Well, you know, as we've talked about this over the years, I've been with you guys a couple of years already. You believe that? Yeah. A couple of years already. We've talked about this idea of experiencing great joy when we follow Jesus. And I think that most of you have reflected on that and thought that one through, and we realize that the joy that Jesus wants us to really bubble up from our soul, so to speak, actually to come up from within us, is actually through the idea of helping others. And we think about bearing our crosses. I don't think any of us, unless we're some kind of a masochist, would want to bear our crosses if we didn't see value in it. And that's what he's going to ask, and Steve's going to talk about that a little bit, about the value of it. And so what we look at is then say, what would motivate us? And you guys have had to think about this. You know, you've had to give this some kind of thought in the past. You know, why do we do certain things in our life that cost us time and money, energy? And prayerfully what's going on in our hearts and minds is we're learning to love God and one another. The 2 major commandments that God gives us. Because with God working in us, the whole idea for God is to teach us to be like Him. And God is a serving God out of love. God is a caring God out of love. God is concerned about every one of us. And He asks us to take that on ourselves. And so what we have to do is decide in our mind and heart, okay, Lord, I'm not there yet and I need your help. Or I'm there, show me how. What would you like me to do today? What may I do to help others? That's bearing our crosses. Because the cross is normally, as Jesus showed us, was not something that Jesus deserved, right? It's something that He did for us. So when God asks us to bear our individual crosses, not because of something that we're guilty of, we're all sinners, but what are we willing to do for others? What are we willing to bear for others? And that stems out of love. And I'll let Stephen take it from there. The impetus, the whole driving force for all of us should be a growing love for God and one another. And that will make it easy for us to bear our individual crosses.
Thank you. So we're going to talk about three missional organizations today. The IMB, the International Mission Board. I think y'all are probably pretty familiar with these. The North American Mission Board, and the group that I went on a trip with called International Commission. But before I do that, I wanted to ask about anyone's experience on the mission field or in missions or their experience with evangelizing.
Bob and I went to Clarion, Pennsylvania with a youth group from Beck's Baptist Church. And before we could minister to any of the children in the area, we had to knock on doors. So I was assigned to a downtown area. Like I said, we met in a park, and with the bridge, and we met under the bridge. We had knocked on doors the day before and told them who we were and what we were doing, and we had the first day about 5 children that came. And of course we had a set curriculum or programs that we followed. And when we finished the week, the little 4th grader came up to me and she said, "I don't have a Bible. I've never heard about Jesus before." So we tried to tell her more about Jesus, but I came home and I sent her a Bible. I don't know where their mother would have let her. It was a strong Catholic area. Have the Bible or not, I never heard from the child again, but children had not been going to church in the area where I was. It was a poor area in downtown Clarion.
It's amazing how many people have not heard about Jesus.
That shocked me when she told me that she had never heard about Jesus.
All right.
And I sat down and talked to her a little bit about who Jesus was and what He had done, and she wanted a Bible, so I mailed her one.
Anybody
Great.
else?
My husband had a thing of people coming to where we were in Beckley, West Virginia, and people really did not care much about a preacher or anything. They all had needs, but whenever they had something, they always found him out and said, "You need help me with this." But we had so many children that would come. We would have places where they would come, and we would always give them refreshment. We would talk to them and just be friends with them because that's what they needed. And one little girl, she was just so thrilled, and she just wanted Jesus in her heart. And she went home, and her dad beat her, really beat her bad. And so we had difficulty with it, and we tried to get back to her and talk to her that, you know, maybe she could come and then not tell her dad where she'd been. So she did that, and she did come to know Jesus. Then we went a lot of places, and one we went down in the valley where people lived in mobile homes, and so I was to work with the children, which I enjoyed doing, getting somebody's mobile home, just go in there. Then my husband would go in another mobile home and get the adults, and he passed out the songbooks. And they had them upside down, and they couldn't read. They could not read. Any of them could not read. So we began the thing. I was the head of teaching people how to learn how to read and write from the state of West Virginia. And so I had some people that were teachers, and I taught them how to teach other people to read and write. And we went, and it was just so amazing that whenever a mother could read just a little bit in a storybook, and I would say, how do you feel? And they said, I can read to my children. I can read to my children. And it was just joyous. There's a lot of things I could talk all night, but I won't tell you all of it. I appreciate you allowing me today, but it was a joyous thing, and it's still in my heart today.
Yes, I would describe my trip as that, very joyous, very peaceful, being on the trip and being each day at a completion. It was hard work, but very joyful when you'd see the eyes fly open or the smiles on the faces, and it was amazing. So quickly, the International Mission Board and the North American Mission Board, both founded in 1845 as part of the Southern Baptist Church. The International Mission Board, their mission, one sacred effort for the propagation of the gospel. And as you guys know, we give a Lottie Moon offering every year. And this was an interesting fact for me to find out that 59% of the IMB is funded from Lottie Moon contributions from all the Southern Baptist churches. 30% is done through associations and state conventions through the Southern Baptist Church. And then another 11% is done through field-generated funds, investment, returns, that type of thing. But Lottie Moon is a big piece of that. I thought that would be a great thing if you guys didn't know that already. So the IMB being focused on the international piece, and the North American Mission Board being focused on domestic missions, we would call, or North America. It exists to work with churches, associations, and state conventions in mobilizing Southern Baptists as a missional force to impact North America with the gospel of Jesus Christ through evangelism and church planting. So, and then something really important that I found, the 10-year evangelism initiative, which started in 2010, urges Southern Baptists to fulfill the challenge of every believer sharing, every person hearing by 2020. And I do believe it's our Life on Mission lessons that we had recently were a small part of that. Certainly, church planting is a big piece of it for the North American Mission Board, and I want to share that this church is sending a group of people to Calgary, Canada at the end of June, first week in July, and Charlotte and I will be a part of that team going to help support 3 church plants there, and then hopefully professing Jesus and seeing some more salvations. Calgary, Canada is only 3% Christian, which I found extraordinary. So North American Mission Board has about 25 cities they've identified to target where Christianity is a minority, and to send people from the Southern Baptist churches to go on mission. So we are extremely excited about that. And it will be Charlotte's first mission trip. So.
Yes, it will be my first mission trip. So you guys will have to pray for me really hard.
So International Commission, the group that I went with, was formed in the 40s, and it was formed out of one church in southern Texas that wanted to simply do some work over into Mexico. And they, as a church, got together and started doing some work, and before you knew it, it grew into a large organization. It used to be called International Crusades, and they recently changed their name to International Commission. They have a small staff in Louisville, Texas. About 5 people are paid employees, and then the president does get some salary, but then everybody else that works for International Commission raises their own funding. And I'm not talking about people like me. I'm going to show you Jeff and Jody Chetwood. They used to be members here at Calvary, and now they're members at Center Grove, and they are regional missionaries for Southeast Asia. But they have to raise their own funding to do their mission work. They do regional mission work for Southeast Asia, and then they participate in some specific projects. Each of the ones I've been to, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Thailand, they've participated in. I would be considered I'm a volunteer, but they use another fancy word for what my role is, and then I either pay my own way or I raise my own funding, except for the fact that International Commission has a covenant relationship with the Southern Baptist Church. So Calvary supports about 25 or 30% of my trip financially. You have to apply, and you have to go through the missions department and that kind of thing, but that is a tremendous support, and that's something that probably I didn't know that until I started doing this type of work. So the main point about International Commission is it is really a bunch of people self-funding themselves and going on these trips. Jeff and Jody will go into an area and identify a project, and they have to be invited. International Commission has to be invited into the area, and then they work over the course of 6 months to a year to coordinate a local church being the center hub of that project, along with outlying churches in the geographical area, maybe a dozen or so, participating in the project. Then they also use a technique or a process called Operation Andrew, and it came from the Billy Graham ministries, where each church identifies 10 people, and we're already starting to use a little bit of this at Calvary, if you've noticed with our cards. Working up to Easter, we identified 10 non-believers, and so each of the churches identifies 10 non-believers or friends and family that they want the missionaries to go visit, house-to-house visits, knocking on doors like you talked about. And so there's a lot of prayer going on, and that is a huge emphasis in mission work, and it's often not talked about enough, about having prayer support, because these 1,827 salvations, 29 salvations, didn't happen because of me, it didn't happen because of the team, it happened because God called those people to himself, and it was through prayer. And daily prayer, we have people supporting us in daily prayer. I ask individually and family members to pray for me throughout the time I'm there, and then obviously churches, and then International Commission has a prayer chain as well. So let me show you a few things from our trip. All right, this is Jeff and Jody Chetwood here in the back, and Ruth is from the Philippines. She also works for International Commission, but I wanted to be sure to show you Jeff and Jody there. It was at the start of our trip. So here's a church out. One of the, if I said a dozen churches, it's just one church that participated in the project, and this is us showing up on Monday morning. You know, we're showing up in the truck and we're waiting on some other people to come, and we're about to go out and make house visits. Some prearranged, some not prearranged. This is a picture looking across the church. So you can see, I'm just trying to show you the remoteness of it all. This was a lady, one of the first ladies that I visited right here, and she had a picture of herself. She's actually in the middle of this black and white photo. She's probably about 16 years old in the picture. That's why I wanted to put it in there, because she's dressed up in her tribal gear. So that was just fascinating to me. And she's in her 80s, and she was a Christian already. She knew about Jesus. Here's this is, let me jump over here to the church. That's another church, local church that participated. Again, very remote. And this is the picnic area beside the church. We're talking about a tin roof and dirt and chairs, and that's plastic chairs, and that's what we're doing. This is a picnic. We're having a potluck. Look at our potluck today. Our potluck right here that they have. They were washing dishes with a hose on the ground. Very different. Haven't eaten a lot of rice. One of our kind of base of operations was a hostel. They called it a hostel, but it was actually a boarding school for kids, about elementary, junior high, some high school kids that was too far out. They lived too far out in the jungle, and so their parents sent them here, and they could stay overnight here and then attend school. And our translators also came from the hostel. We had about half a dozen girls who had graduated from high school in their 20s that helped us translate. This is just a picture of a family in a village. think that's their village right there. You can see, very remote. There is only another 6 houses, and these are their homes. These are their houses and homes. And this family was just so nice to invite me in. They believed, they were already believers. Just wanted to show you this photo right here. Most of the homes had a open air type sitting area that basically people reclined and relaxed. We ate out here as well, but it was a cool place because it let the air in and the breeze blow, which the temperature was about 80, 85, and some days 90 degrees. Picture of the jungle there. These what look like palm trees are actually oil trees. They grow clumps of berries at the top where you would think a coconut would be, but they use that oil to make all different kinds of cooking oils. That's one of their main exports, their crops. Along with rubber, they have rubber trees, and then rice is obviously a main export. Here's a picture of a village, typical of a day where we'd show up at a village consisting of about 12 houses there. And then here's the group back at the hostel, the girls that helped us do translations, a guy that was on my team that partnered with me. And here we get to a couple stories I want to get down into as far as, this was the village I was talking about where I felt like spiritual warfare was going on that day. And this was the first house that I visited with the pastors. The lady was beating her chest. Her dad was practicing witchcraft. Her dad was going to get mad at her if she converted to Christianity. She couldn't do it. There was 2 or 3 pastors in this building with me and another volunteer, and we were praying on her, and she wouldn't invite us in. It took about 10 or 15 minutes to get invited in the house, and then we were probably in there 20 or 25 minutes, and it was a back and forth of this, she wants to and she doesn't want to. So I just saw this real struggle going on for the first time. Usually we would get very open arms as far as what we were doing, or no, I don't want to hear, and I'll show you some of those pictures too. But I knew I was in for a different day when we came to that house right there. And it was like that for most of the day pretty much. And here's another family. The mother received Christ. This is the mother of this boy right here, and he's married to this girl, and she is a Muslim, and her kids are Christians. Her mother received Christ. He prayed a rededication prayer probably that day, but she would not receive Christ. I looked at her multiple times, and I said, open your heart, open your mind. She was very committed to her Muslim faith. And these are the pastors I was with. This fella in the green, I'll show you a video, and he's going to be, he was just fantastic as far as the power of prayer and what he was doing with the people. Here's, you might not be able to see her very well. She said she was 73 years old, but I think she was more closer to 90. But she practiced witchcraft and she worshiped Satan. And she was this was one of the most direct encounters I had with anybody in regards to evil spirits and just terrible stuff. And she believed there was a heaven. She believed there was a hell. She wanted to go to heaven, but she didn't want to give up her witchcraft. And she didn't want to give up what she was doing. And she knew that if she kept doing what she was doing, not only was she going to be in the cage in hell, but she was going to be under the cage in hell. So it was just incredible to see that. Now the good news is I had another lady who was doing her witchcraft and stuff, and she said, I'm going to get away from that, and she received Jesus. So it was a beautiful thing. But that was tough that day. And here's just a picture of the church, the local volunteers in the church. This is that same village. They had us, after we got done about 2 or 3 o'clock, we had a big potluck. Every meal was the same: rice, noodles, mixed vegetables, fish. So I got pretty tired of rice. But just a great little, just no different from our church family here. People gathered around, eating, and then we even sang some songs that afternoon. I just included this picture because these 2 little girls posed for me, and it's one of the cutest pictures I've ever taken before. But these 2 little girls are in the same village as the lady practicing witchcraft. So I sent an email to my dad, with those two pictures, and I said, good and evil, good versus evil. You know, incredible. This is just a picture of how, you know, we organized our group when we showed up at a village in the morning. We would meet and decide who was going to go out with teams and discuss our strategy. This particular family right here was one of the more personal, incredible stories that I had. This man right here is the dad. This is the mom. This is a young daughter, a granddaughter, and there's what's not in the picture is 2 other daughters and another son. It was a very large family. I think they had 8 kids. But these were the younger kids in the family. He was actually not there when I started my personal witness, and he was out in the rice fields. It was harvest time there. And so it was mostly the mother and daughters. There was one son and some grandchildren, and they were very open about hearing the gospel. They prayed to receive Christ. They kind of knew about Jesus, but they didn't know how to explain Jesus, and they prayed to receive Christ. And then when that happens, the next thing I'll ask is, can I pray for you with anything in your family, any needs that I can pray for? Well, she was looking at the translator, the mom was looking at the translator, and the translator was looking down. I could tell something was going on, and I wasn't getting the message. So I said, hey, what's going on? Let's figure this out. And so she said she's worried about her husband. He's not a Christian, and he's drinking too much. And I could just tell there was hurt all over her face, and it got all over me. This particular day is when I sold my house, and my house closed. So that was a big day for me. I was on this trip, and my house sold where I had been married in before. A lot of past got behind me. A lot of problems, a lot of family conflict got put behind me. And I just kind of knew that was going on back in the States, and because I was watching the time and everything. So it was started just, and so about that time, he came up on a motorcycle, and he actually pulled in underneath us. There's space underneath here. And I thought, oh my goodness, what's going to happen now? Because here's a man, you know, he's been out in the field, and, you know, what's this guy doing witnessing to my family, you know? Well, he came in, and his posture was humble, and he came and sat down in the back. And so, you know, you can't let anybody go when you're in that position, man. You got to get down to it. You know, does he know Jesus? What's his beliefs? He doesn't know Jesus. You know, I knew that already. But as he opened the hearing, I shared the gospel with him, and he wanted to pray to receive Jesus. And so I had already prayed with them, but I had a one-on-one prayer with him while they were sitting there. So the power of the Holy Spirit was coming in quickly, because I had seen the hurt on her face. I'd seen, you know, you don't know what's going on with the family at that point. I just could feel it and see it. But it was a beautiful family. He was obviously doing something right. They had 8 kids, and 2 of them were in the city working at a job somewhere in the city. So he was doing some things right. He prayed to receive Jesus. When I prayed with him to receive Jesus, I started breaking down. It started coming all over me. And then when all of them got together in a circle and prayed, they were already in a circle and praying. I have never had the power of the Holy Spirit come upon me. I just felt such a release of everything. I couldn't even verbalize the prayer. They must have thought, you know, what's going on with me? You know, I couldn't speak. I was just crying like a baby. It was great. It ended up being great. I had a friend of mine tell me when I got back and I told that story. He said, it wasn't your prayer that made the witness. It was just you that made the witness about, you know, they could see, you know, I had told them about my family, that I had daughters and had been married and things like that. And so they knew I was a family guy. And so maybe what my friend was trying to tell me was maybe I was an example to the dad, which I never thought about that, but I didn't feel like I was being an example to the dad. I just felt like I was just hurting with them and healing with them too. So that was the best part of my trip right there. Besides this other story I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to be done. But here's just a couple of funny pictures. This guy, we got into his house. He didn't care whether he had his shirt on or not. He said, I got to go to the bathroom before we started. And he was pretty comical to sit there without his shirt on. And here's more food. at the pastor's house where we ate. Here's my translators. These are actually my two translators that translated on the story I just told you about. So they're pretty special. All right, now this is toward the end of my trip in Singapore, and I just want to show, Singapore is a great city. It is a beautiful city. It's very clean there, and we went downtown. We had an overnight there, and we went downtown. If anybody's ever been to San Antonio, Texas, and seen the Riverwalk, it's much like that. But this was on my way back, and the project was over. And so after we ate at this restaurant here, I was reluctantly there. I was tired. I wanted to go to the hotel room, but we couldn't check in until late that night. And then the rest of the group, I was with about 15 people, and they went on themselves, and I just went by myself. I just wanted some Steve time. And so I just walked around. I went over to where the taxis were that were going to pick us up in 2 hours. I had 2 hours to kill. And so I said, well, I think I'll just try to get some soft serve ice cream. I'll try to be on a quest. So I go into there was a mall, and I walk into the mall, open the door, and to the right there's this guy holding a soft serve ice cream cone. He's sitting there talking to his girlfriend. And I said, well, maybe they speak English. So I walk over. You speak English? Yes, I speak English. He spoke very good English. And I said, where did you get that? Can I ask you where you got that? And he said, downstairs around the corner, whatever. And I go downstairs around the corner. I go get my soft serve ice cream. And I come back upstairs. And at a distance, I hold up my cone. And they laugh at me. They got my cone. So I think the guys and I had been talking about what the religion of Singapore was. So I think to myself, well, maybe he knows. He's probably from around here, and he speaks good English. I'm not thinking about witnessing to him whatsoever. Not thinking about my trip at all. But I opened up with, hey, I'm a missionary. I'm here with a group of people. We were wondering what the religion of Singapore was. And his reaction was, you're a missionary? He says, man, sit down. I need to talk to you. So I sit down. He tells me a little bit about himself. He was Jehovah's Witnesses. Him and his girlfriend were Jehovah's Witness. They had left the Jehovah's Witness church 2 years. And they had, I think we're good. They had not been in church. But his question to me was, he said, I've been doubting my salvation. I just wondered about being saved. How do you know for sure that you're saved? How can you be sure of your salvation? And I was dumbfounded, okay? I mean, the guy spoke real good English. We didn't need an interpreter. And he had some Bible knowledge. And he was asking me the ultimate question for me to answer. So the first thing I thought was, don't mess this up. Don't mess this up. That God was teeing this up for me to witness to them. And I did, and he was 39. He worked for a software company. She was 36. She owned her own wholesale clothing distributorship, and they both prayed to receive Jesus right there in the mall. So that was my second best part of my trip right there. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up, and just wanted to review this third session of mission work with missional organizations, and then an example of a mission trip. And next session we'll be working on planning our own mission trip. So I hope you all can make it back for that.